Showcasing local talent, professionals, and everyday people making Salt Lake City what it is today. It's time for another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast.
Thank you for joining me for episode 143 of the I Am Salt Lake podcast. My name is Chris Hollifield. I am your host. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the podcast. Especially first-time listeners. Can't urge you enough to go through the back catalog and check out some of the other conversations. After you're done listening to this episode, you can find the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, wherever you consume podcasts. You can listen to I Am Salt Lake. You can also find it at iamsaltlake.com, and that's where you can get all the information to get in touch with me if you would like to. You can also follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Any of your social media outlets, you can find me right there and reach out. I'd like to get to know you and find out what you're enjoying about living in Salt Lake City. Hey, this episode, I sit down with Bill Allred as well as Dylan Allred and talk to them about their podcast, the Let's Go Eat Show. I also talked to Bill about Radio from Hell and his early radio career. I'm going to put all the links on the show notes for this episode 143. You can find that iamsaltlake.com/143. That way you can find all the links for the Let's Go Eat Show, Bill Allred, Radio from Hell, all right there online. And before I jump into that episode, though, I want to, of course, give some love to our sponsors, people that are helping keep this podcast alive. First of all, I want to thank the Urban Lounge for continual support of the podcast. Check them out. Some great shows coming up there. You can find their website, theurbanloungeslc.com. Just scroll down through the list. You can buy your tickets right there online, as well as connect with them on Facebook and Twitter. So check out the Urban Lounge, theurbanloungeslc.com. Also want to thank many thanks to Tiff Blue from Peach Treats. Custom ear art made right here in Salt Lake City. Love her to death. Thank you so much for sponsoring this episode, Tiff. Check out her Etsy shop. You can find that right online at peachtreats.etsy.com. The best part, you type in the coupon code I Am Salt Lake. It's all one word. It's IAM Salt Lake. You get 20% off of your entire purchase. You're helping out the podcast. You're also helping out a local artist, as well as getting some awesome jewelry. Again, that's peachtreats.etsy.com. Also, want to thank Exigent Records. Crucial Fest is coming up. I know I've talked about them on the podcast. Thank you so much, Exigent Records, as well as everything you've done for the podcast. Check out exigentrecords.com, crucialfest.com for a complete lineup. Buy your wristbands. Get them early. I believe they're $30 through the end of May, and then they're going to go up. You don't want to pay individual door prices. Just get your wristband. It gets you into the entire fest. Again, that's crucialfest.com for a complete listing of that. Let's see, what else is going on with my life? What else is going on in the life of Chris Hollifield? Just finished up this semester, wrote my final paper, turning that in on Tuesday. Really excited for summer. A lot of great stuff is going to be going on here in Salt Lake City. They're going to be announcing the Twilight concert series here at the beginning of May. Really, really excited for that. The Head and the Heart, they've already announced that. Really excited for that show. So a lot going on this summer. I'm taking a break out of school, so I'm not going to be doing semesters during the summertime. So hopefully I'll be doing more with the podcast. Hopefully I'll be getting out more in the city and capturing that here on the podcast. If you have any recommendations for people that you would like to hear on the show, drop me an email. I'd love to hear from you guys. You can find all that at iamsaltlake.com. But listen, I'm going to quit talking now. I'm going to jump into the conversation that I had with Bill Allred and Dylan Allred down at From Scratch on 62 East Gallivan Avenue in Salt Lake City, Utah. Now, where are we recording is From Scratch down here on Gallivan Avenue, right? Mm-hmm. I just got in here, and so let's. I guess I kind of want to start at the beginning with you, Bill, and then Dylan. Feel free to jump in when you would like. But when did you get interested in radio of any sorts? How old were you, Bill, when you got interested?
Well,
in radio?
I've always listened to the radio.
Okay.
And when I was a little kid, I always listened to the radio with my mom. she liked to listen to... when I was a real little kid, there were still radio dramas on in the daytime, a little bit. Radio plays, radio dramas, like soap operas, when I was very, very little. It was very early memory of listening to some of those with my mother.
So you like the talking and the storytelling.
Yeah. And then as a teenager, I listened to the radio for music all the time, of course. And
what kind of music were you listening to back then?
Rock and roll. Rock music. And roll. Yeah, although late at night, I used to like to listen to talk radio. There was a guy on KSL. I grew up in Utah, and there was a guy on KSL who did this show called The Nightcaps. His name was Herb Jepko, and I think he came on late at night at 11 o'clock at night or something like that, or midnight, and he would talk to people from all over the country, all over the world, I think. They would call in, and they would just chat about stuff. It was not political at all. They would just talk about, their aches and their pains and their, how you doing? Oh, here's Margie calling in from St. Paul. Margie, how are you, Margie? Oh, Herb, it's so great to hear your voice. I haven't been feeling too well, and my husband passed away last year. He talked to all these old people from all over the country, and it was just this really gentle. It was weird. It was just this weird show, and.
So then at what point did you decide, okay, I want to do something with radio?
Oh, I didn't. I never wanted to be on the radio.
You never wanted to be on the radio?
No, I just liked listening to it.
So what got you working with the radio then?
That was purely accidental.
Well, share that.
I was going to be, what I wanted to do was be an actor. So that's when I got out of high school. I went to Weber State and studied theater, and did that, and then went to graduate school and studied theater some more. Studied to an MFA in acting, and what my plan was to be an actor, professional stage actor.
And did you do any plays of any sort?
Yeah, tons of stuff, and tons of plays in school. I was in plays in high school, plays in college, and graduate school, and then during the summer I would always act in theater companies and stuff. And then I went to, after I got out of school, I got a job in being an actor in California at a theater company there, and that was for the summer. And then I came back home to Utah and got a job with a regional theater company in Florida, and went and did that for a year, touring all around Florida.
Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, I loved it.
The traveling and meeting people and acting.
Yeah, it was hard. That job was really hard because I was on the road I was on the road constantly and living in motels. And
were you married by this point yet at all?
Yeah, yeah. I was married, but my wife didn't come with me.
Did she like that you were doing that, or did she miss you, or was she complaining?
No, she
didn't.
I'm sure she didn't miss me.
She didn't miss you.
No, she. What did she miss me? My son is sitting here.
I wasn't around then, but I don't think it bothered her because she was a aspiring actress in college, and that's what she studied in college too.
Yeah,
so she was supportive.
She knew what it was.
She knew the world.
Mm-hmm. So I was off doing that, and she had a job in Utah, and I went home for Christmas and Thanksgiving and that kind of stuff. And then I got another job. I got just various acting jobs, and then I decided I'd go to New York and moved there. She didn't move with me, and I got an apartment with a friend of mine from school in New York, and got a job in an office, and then went and auditioned for plays, and got little roles and things in plays in New York in really obscure theaters around Manhattan, and approximately, just for people listening, about what time period? This is in the late 70s.
Late 70s, okay.
And then I got a job. I got a job at a dinner theater in Virginia, and so I gave up my apartment in New York and moved to Virginia for a while and did that. And then I got a job at the Utah Shakespeare Festival. So I flew to Utah and did that job for the summer, and that was late 70s. And then when that was done, I didn't have another job, and so I went back to Ogden, Utah, where my wife was, and thought, well, let me get some money together, and this time the two of us will move to New York. Let's not live apart. You'll quit your job. Well, let's get some money together. We'll both move to New York this time. And
was Dylan around yet?
No.
By this point?
No. And thank you, David. And then I'll get some money together. We'll both move to New York, and I'll continue to pursue this acting. And one of the jobs I ended up getting, I worked in a bar for a little bit, and then I ended up getting a job at a radio station in Ogden.
What was the name of that radio station? Do you remember?
KJQ.
KJQ.
Yeah, I have a pretty good memory.
Yeah.
I have a pretty good memory. And it was called KJQ, and that was in 1980. And
now that wasn't that the original X96, right? KJQ.
Well, yeah, but at this time, KJQ was only an AM station, 1490 KJQ. Except the owner of the station, he didn't like the way it sounded, 1490, so he'd say 15. It was 15 KJQ in Ogden, because that was close enough.
And what were you doing there? Just putting music in? Were you talking?
They let me. I worked from 11 o'clock at night to 6 o'clock in the morning. And they said you can record a weather forecast once an hour and then just play tapes of other people talking, play the automation. And I went, yeah, okay, that's fine with me. I just want to get some money together to go back to New York and be an actor.
So your end goal was to continue being an actor, nothing to do with radio.
Right. I didn't.
So at what point did you decide to ditch acting and say, okay, I can do something with this radio? Maybe we're jumping ahead a little bit in the story, but
I don't know.
At what point did that happen?
I don't know if it happened it didn't happen overnight. It wasn't it wasn't a snap of the fingers decision.
Yeah.
He's still trying to get money together to go back to New York City.
Yeah, one of these days.
Still trying to get the hell out of Utah, right?
Yeah, one of these days. It was probably more a gradual
process
thing than if anything. But before long, I was not doing that 11 o'clock at night to 6 in the morning thing. The guy who came in at 6 o'clock in the morning live said, well, you're probably too good to be just playing tapes. You seem to be pretty smart and have a good voice. Because they were saying, well, you can record some commercials. And he said, why don't you be the newsman on my morning show? Why don't you do the news, read the news on the morning show, and maybe kind of be my partner? You can also maybe do some comedy bits and stuff with me as well.
Okay.
And that kind of, maybe at that point I was going, well, I kind of like this.
You enjoyed yourself and you had fun.
I was enjoying it, and I said, and I'm pretty good at it. And it's using a lot of the same skills that I have. And I'm getting a regular paycheck.
Which is the most important thing, really, at the end of the day.
A regular paycheck. It wasn't much money, but it was regular. It was steady. Although that station, we were always struggling financially, so you'd always, the station struggled financially quite a bit, so you'd always, when you got your paycheck every 2 weeks, you'd get it. Unfortunately, you work early in the morning, so when you get your paycheck at 10 o'clock, you'd run to the bank and cash it. The boss would say, you're going to hammer your check at the bank, aren't you? And you say, you bet your ass I am. Because if you cashed it later in the day, a lot of times there wouldn't
be money in the account.
The bank could go, I'm sorry, there's no money here.
Yeah. Maybe, again, I'm jumping way ahead. I'm just trying to get through the story here, the timeline of where you're at currently. X96 is here in Salt Lake.
Yeah,
you're teamed up. I mean, you have Carrie and Gina. You guys have been doing Radio from Hell for
Carrie and I started I started at KJQ in 1980. Carrie came to KJQ after I quit in 1986, or about 1985 probably. And then I came back to KJQ in 1986, and he and I started working together then. And we've worked together pretty much steadily ever since, although we did have a split when KJQ started to die. I got fired and left with a bunch, I got fired and went to work with a bunch of people who started X96, and that was in 1991.
And did you guys click right away? You and Carrie, did you guys click?
I don't know. It wasn't our choice to work together.
Yeah.
the owner of the station, when I came back, the owner of the station said, well, I've got this guy, Kerry Jackson, doing the mornings now. And I had been working on the mornings with another guy. The guy who was working with Kerry. Paul Wilson was his name. And the owner of the station said, I'm going to have Paul, I'm going to take him off the mornings and put you on with Kerry Jackson when I came back. I said, can I come back to work there? To the owner of the station. He said, oh, you bet. I'd love to have you come back. I'd never really left completely. I used to come in on the weekends and record commercials for them and stuff. I was doing another job. I tried to go work in television, and that didn't work out. So I came back, and they said, oh, I'd love to have you come back, and I did. And he just put us together, and we went, okay, sure, why not? And we started working together. And I guess we kind of clicked. We did, we were fine.
Well, because you guys have a great chemistry now. I mean, I think the three of you work really well together with Radio from Hell. Do you think that there's any magic to that, or do you think it just happens that you luck out with certain individuals? Any obstacles that sometimes people need to get over?
I think the reason there are a few reasons why we get along well. I wouldn't say that we get along well together, that we get along with each other. We work well together because we don't socialize
outside of work
very often.
Why do you think that that's a bad thing to do?
I think we see enough of each other at work. I think that morning shows and rock and roll bands, those are the two. They're kind of analogous. If you are and touring theater companies, it was the same thing when I was with a touring theater company. I saw so much of those people when I was on tour with them. I could not wait to be away from them. There were some of them who hooked up and that just caused problems. It's like when two band members in a rock and roll band, and usually it's a male. See you, Jeffrey.
Jeffrey Stedman.
Jeffrey.
Yeah.
People, when they go to say, my name is Jeffrey, and you call them Jeff, I think that's insulting. His name is Jeffrey. And I said, goodbye, Jeff, and then I corrected myself. His name is Jeffrey. Anyway, like when two members of a rock band, and usually it's a guy and a girl, and they start having a romantic relationship, it fucks up the band. The band goes, it blows up the band. Or if the band members are buddy, if you're on tour and then you go out and get drunk together all the time, and it just ends up causing problems. The best thing you can do is do your stuff on stage and then go to different hotel rooms and don't mess around with each other.
Absolutely.
Or if you're, and then once you're off tour, take a break, and then when you go to rehearsal for the next album or the next tour, whatever it is, rehearse and then go home. And it's the same thing with us on the show. We do our show. We do some things, at the office afterwards that we need to do, and
But I even noticed, just to maybe add to my...
Yeah, absolutely.
Just watching them over the years, they, it's kind of like you'd see just people working at a steel mill, like the mics go off, well, see ya, and they just go. And you even purposely a lot don't speak to each other until the microphones go on.
Yeah, we try not to, in the morning when we get there, like somebody will one of us will start talking to the other and say, what? Nope.
Let's talk about this on the radio.
We'll save it for the radio.
Yeah.
Save it for the radio. And then when the mics go off, we try to have a really businesslike relationship after at the office, try to be sort of businesslike about things, and then go home.
But it's not like, come over and watch TV with me.
Let's go out for drinks.
Yeah.
And then occasionally when we do socialize, occasionally we go on trips together, like a business conference or something like that. We get along very well. We have a nice time on those rare occasions that we do unwind together. But mostly we don't see, I see them 20 hours a week. That's enough.
That's enough for you.
Yeah. So I think that's why it works.
So you've been involved, in radio since 1980 approximately. We're in 2014. Where do you see radio shifting? Obviously it has. That's a loaded question, I realize. And that's kind of where I want to venture in with the podcast here that you and Dylan are doing with the Let's Go Eat show. What do you see the biggest change with radio is?
Oh shit! I don't know. Anybody can do a radio show. You can do a radio show. You're doing a podcast. I mean, it's essentially. It's different than a radio show. I guess.
It is. Do you think we'll always have radios in the cars?
Yeah,
stuff like that. With tune into 96.3 and.
Yeah, we'll always radio. People have predicted the death of radio since television started, and it never died, and it won't.
Why do you think that is? Why? Your personal opinion.
There just will always be a place for it. It's just another. It's another venue. It's another avenue. It's another place. And feel free to chime in on this.
Yeah.
Dylan has really good ideas about this, of being of a generation that. I mean, he grew up with radio, because he's never known me other than a radio guy.
Right. Yeah. I grew up passing out free stuff out of the KJQ Milk Beast.
Bessie the Milk Beast, yeah.
I think what you're trying to say is that the medium of talking through a microphone without visuals, which is what a podcast is, which is what your morning show is, will always be around. And the shift that's happening is that you're just getting it more ways and different ways.
It's just another way to get it.
So
we just want to give it to you as many ways as you can,
Absolutely.
So
that's a good catchphrase. We just want to give it to you as many ways as we can.
That's right. Okay.
So radio people, Radio from Hell, has to learn, and their management and stuff has to learn that you can't just broadcast your radio show. You have to do all these other things with it.
But they didn't realize that at first, though, from what I understand. They didn't, count the stats of the downloads and the online listeners.
It's still a struggle to get. It's always a struggle to get. Technology changes, and then it's always a struggle to get everything to come up to speed along with it. It's struggled. I was just listening to somebody talk about it on a podcast, ironically enough. How the music industry is trying to come up to speed with the changes in technology, and how to try to figure out how to make money. Because it's really the bottom line, isn't it? How to make money. You don't make any money on your podcast, do you? Or very little?
Just enough to kind of keep the hosting going and the audio there. Not a living though. No.
How do you make money?
Advertisers.
Maybe not. Maybe that's not how you make money on this kind of stuff. I mean, really, you've got to figure out ways to just. Get something out there into the digital stream that people will pay for. To get something out there in the river that they want and that they will pay for.
It'll never happen.
Well, I'm not so sure.
Like to what do you mean, to pay for a podcast? You mean to pay the 99 cents?
For instance, Mark Maron has kind of started to do pretty well.
The WTF podcast.
Yeah. And what he's done now, he makes money with advertisers, but really I think where he started to make his big money is subscribing. He's now his podcasts are free. Only the first. Well, I don't know how.
I think it's 50 episodes.
Is it 50 that are free, and then if you want access to the archive, you pay for it, and people do. And I think that's kind of a model where people will make money. Phil Hendry is an old-time radio guy.
Yeah.
And I think Phil Hendry is making a lot of dough right now.
But, I mean...
Exclusively, I don't think he's even on the radio now.
No, he's not.
He is making money by charging admission to hear Phil Hendry.
But that's... so people like Mark Maron or Adam Carolla or Chris Hardwick, Phil Hendry, I think, too. I heard he was on WTF recently. But really how they make money from podcasting is that they are also stand-up comedians and public speakers. And so getting their free podcast into the hands of...
thousands, hundreds of thousands, and it gets their word out, their name out for the shows and for their events.
They start selling a lot more tickets.
Yeah.
So I have an advantage with the Let's Go Eat Show podcast over you, for instance, is that I have a radio show and I can talk about it. And the kind of the way, and I don't know if I'm looking at it the right way, really, is I look at the Let's Go Eat Show as kind of just an extension of the Radio from Hell show, in that people who like the Radio from Hell show, if they want more Kerry Jackson, they can go to the Geek Show podcast. If they like Bill Allred, they can go to the Let's Go Eat show. If they like both of us, they can go to both of them. There are people who listen to both of them.
Yeah. Well, I know I listen to both of them, so
and they're. So it's just, it's to me, it's just if you like the personality on the radio, I want more of that personality, I'll go listen to that.
So where did the idea come from? Did Dylan come to you one day, Bill, and say, I got this idea, or how did that evolve? Let's talk about the birth of the Let's Go Eat show. How did it, when and how? And
well, we just kept talking about that we needed to do it.
Yeah, I think
the two of you did.
Yeah, and it took a long time for us to really buckle down and get it done and decide exactly what it was going to be. That we talked about it being just about food. We talked about it being just about going to different people. I mean, there were lots. It took a while, but eventually I just said,
about what time? How long have you guys been doing the podcast now?
2.5 years.
2.5 years.
Yeah.
So you've been doing it a while. You've been learning. I mean, what was the hardest thing to learn in the beginning?
Dylan always chastises me that I treat it too much like a radio show, that it's a different animal. And I'm not sure why that's...
In what way? How do you treat it like a radio show?
In radio, you constantly... And I understand why you don't have to do it, but, you constantly reset the scene.
We're sitting here with Bill Allred and Dylan Allred.
Yeah,
and,
right.
kind of...
Because you anticipate that people are always coming in and out.
Absolutely.
And I guess on a podcast...
Well, they're there to listen to that.
They know who they're listening to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you really don't have to do that. And I guess, is it annoying if you do that on a podcast?
I don't think so.
If you reset the scene? I've tried to stop doing it, and I don't think I do it as much. Well, it's actually less of a burden. It's less of a burden to do it.
Right.
So when obviously coming from radio into podcasting, you were kind of familiar with the gear. You kind of knew the audio stuff you needed to get. Like myself, it's like I had to read some books, listen to some podcasts.
I'm not familiar with it at all.
You're not familiar?
No.
With it?
No, I don't know how any of this works.
This is completely Dylan's deal.
Yeah, no, I bought this. A guy came to me. I don't even remember his name now.
And he's pointing to, for people that can't see, the mixer.
Yeah. And he came to me, and I guess I'd been talking on the radio about doing it, and he said, I've got this gear. I do a podcast, and I want to get better gear. I'll sell you all my gear for $300.
Well, there you go.
And I went, okay. And
over time,
and I knew enough to know that this was adequate. And he sold me this board, this little mixer board, and all of these microphones, I think. Or
most of these microphones, but I've replaced all the cable and the stands and added stuff over time as we figured out what we needed.
Well, and that just goes to show how cheap it is to start a podcast, that anybody can do it.
Or you could do it for way less than that.
Do it into your iPhone.
Well, and that's even how I did some of my first episodes of I Am Salt Lake was on the iPhone. But then I realized, okay, I need a little bit better quality. How many, you guys have done probably well over 100 episodes by now, right? I've talked to 100 people.
No, I think we're probably pretty close to 100, give or take. We started off, the first year or so, we did every other week.
Okay.
And then recently we've gotten back to doing an episode every other week just because...
We've been really busy. I've been busy with other stuff, renegotiating contracts and bullshit,
Was that a pretty stressful time for you? I had a few people, I was sitting down... Back to the radio thing, they were kind of curious, how that was dealing with that. I mean, were you nervous that you weren't going to be staying on the radio, or I don't know how in depth you want to get with that?
I'll answer anything you want to ask me.
I mean, because you saw the hype on Twitter, and everybody was like, "Okay."
It was monstrous.
Yeah,
it was awful. It was every bit as nerve-wracking as it may seem to have been, and probably even worse, right?
But why wouldn't they have kept you on the radio? I mean, you guys are one of the number one radio shows out there.
No, they wanted to keep us. They wanted to keep us. They just didn't understand our value.
I gotcha.
They didn't, and I want to be fair about it. They didn't. Our owner is an interesting person. Our new owner is an interesting person. and he's new to radio, and
so what doesn't he understand then? What?
Well, I think it just took a while for us to come to an understanding of for us to really kind of have him come to an understanding of what we are and who we are and what our value is truly. What
you bring to the table, what you have to offer.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily money. It's other things. It's terms that are. If I started talking about it, it would be kind of silly and boring.
It would be boring.
Yeah, no, and that's fine. That's fine. I was just kind of curious how that was dealing with that, because I mean that was a recent,
Let me just say this: we talked at cross purposes for quite some time, and that was very frustrating. The morning show and our new ownership and management. I think that's what ultimately happened, is that we talked at cross purposes for a long time, and it was very frustrating for us, and it was frustrating for him, I'm sure.
Well, and I'm sure if things were, if you were to ever just do a podcast, I think full-time, Bill, I think you would have quite a few listeners if that was your only outlet to get your word out there, get what you had to say out there.
Yeah, and that was a consideration. I mean, we were making plans that, so what do we do?
I mean, we got to the point where I would call you every day and say, do you still have a job? Are you, it was that.
I know. Yeah.
It was that intense for them for a couple of weeks about just really what is going to happen here. It was really hard for them.
It's making me feel terrible now.
Well, thinking about it again. We don't need to talk about it anymore, guys. But really, for people listening, to the I Am Salt Lake podcast, to listen to your guys' podcast, give a brief description. I mean, it's just conversations with people more or less in Salt Lake, kind of like how I do it, talk to people in Salt Lake. I mean, how would you describe the show, Bill?
Well, we just like to bullshit with people over a good meal.
Yeah.
And we usually let them pick the restaurant that they want to go to. We set it up with the... We call the restaurant, and generally, very often, it's someplace we've been, or we know the restaurant owner, or it's a client of the radio station, an advertiser on the radio station, and they say, "Oh, sure, come on in." And today, for instance, we talked to Jeffrey Stedman, who runs Yelp here in town. I guess you said he's your mentor.
Well, he was helping me. I went through a recent divorce, and he was.
He's been there too.
He's been there too. So he was there for advice. And
Dylan's mother and I got divorced many years ago. 20 years.
Best thing they could have done. It was.
Well, it's funny. At the time, you don't think it is, but then as time goes on, you realize it is the best thing that you ever could have done.
It certainly can be.
Absolutely, it is. So,
what is it? Louis C.K. says that it's a good thing, and that no happy marriage has ever ended in divorce. Because that would be terrible. If two people are completely happy together, and then all of a sudden they got divorced, but that has happened 0 times.
0 times.
And you just recently had Governor Herbert on the podcast.
Yeah, now we recorded that. I listened to a little bit of it. It sounded remarkably good.
It was great.
We just recorded that on a little handheld thing walking around the governor's mansion.
Yeah.
I worked on that for a long time.
Well, no, because I know you talked about getting him, kind of like he was your dream person to get on and talk to.
Well, I never thought it would happen. Our Radio from Hell producer, Richie, kind of finally made that happen. And
was he nervous to meet with you? Was he nervous to sit down, or was he afraid that especially with everything going on in Utah right now with the marriages and this and that?
I don't think he was. I don't know. He might have been a little nervous at first.
He might have been, but he has nothing to lose.
He's the governor.
He's the most popular governor in the country.
Yeah, and it was. I guess, and I talked about this on the radio. The funniest moment of the whole thing was, for me, I was standing there talking to him. We're standing side by side, and all of a sudden we're looking at a picture or something, and he's describing the picture to me there at the governor's mansion, and then all of a sudden I feel something on my shoulder, and I look over, and he's got his arm around me, like
the friendly
buddy,
the friendly buddy.
Yeah, he's got his arm around my shoulder, and he's pointing at this picture, and I'm going, what the hell? The governor's got his arm around my shoulder.
Must have been kind of cool, though.
Yeah, actually, it was kind of, And he, I didn't just ask him all silly questions about the mansion. I asked him some,
About
questions
gay
about gay marriage at the end, and I asked him about pollution and why he wasn't doing more about that, but I asked him I just asked him in a respectful, and at the end I thought it was interesting. I said, I totally disagree with you about gay marriage, and I think that in the long run, you're going to be on the wrong side of history here, and gay marriage is just going to be a fact, Governor. And what do you think how do you think you'll feel when Utah loses this fight? And he just answered it.
Oh, he did a great job.
Calmly,
you guys, both of you guys did a great job with that interview, I think. And if people listening right now haven't listened to it, I highly recommend to go check it out and listen.
He was sweet. He was kind of sweet. He was kind of nice. And I thought it was interesting to ask him about. I said, when you were just little Gary Herbert, little kid growing up in Provo, what was you like? What was your life like there? And he talked about, being from a broken. I mean, his parents were divorced, and he had a stepmother, and it was just an interesting kid, interesting guy to talk to. And
so the podcast once a week comes out. Well, you tried about once a week ish. Just for people listening, so that way they can find you guys and subscribe and what to expect.
iTunes and Stitcher and
pretty much anywhere podcast can be. What is your role, Dylan? I mean, you're kind of the producer. You kind of man the boards here.
Mm-hmm. I do all the technical stuff. I'll take the episodes and I don't kind of edit them a little bit. Add the intros, add music. I put them on the website and deal with all the technical aspects.
So your dad has the easy job. He just gets to talk to the people. He doesn't have to deal with all. See, I got to do it all. I got to do the editing, the email, the people to come on the show, and all that stuff.
That's the one thing I like interviewing people, and I don't mind some of the technical stuff. But the one thing as an interviewer, I have said over the years when I've been able to throw my weight around a little bit, I finally got into a position where I could throw my weight around and said, I'd be happy to do an interview show for you. I will not schedule guests.
So that's Dylan's job then.
We split it.
I mean, occasionally I will schedule a guest
because the reason for that is it's much easier for you to just call somebody and say, hey, it's me, Bill, you want to come do my podcast, than it is for me to email them and explain who I am and who my dad is and what the podcast is and what it's about, and then wait for them to respond if they even are going, it's much easier for him to just call somebody.
Oh, there's a lot of back and forth. I mean, trust me, I know I've been there. You know what I mean? Sure. It's a tough thing.
Yeah. And I'm lucky because I can throw his name around when I get in touch with people.
Yeah, there you go.
But,
where would you like to see the podcast go? I mean, just continue kind of doing what you're doing now, or do you have any things that you care to share? Or
I don't know. I met some people last week from the Utah Convention and Visitors Bureau. I forget the guy's name. I got to get back in touch with him. But he said he was working with the Utah Restaurant Association, and they were talking about me doing some kind of hooking up with the Utah Restaurant Association and making the podcast part of that.
That'd be cool.
And so I'd just like to see it get a little more. He said it would give you nationwide distribution. We could distribute it nationwide, and I think that would be nice. So what I would do is still keep it kind of focused. The Let's Go Eat Show focused still on local people, but then I would expand the restaurant portion of it and focus on that a little bit more too.
And what do you mean by expand on the restaurant part?
Well, just
restaurants outside of Utah.
Well, no, here in Utah, but do a lot more with that and make it more foodie oriented.
Talk to maybe the cooks and
do more.
People.
We used to do quite a bit more of that, and we've kind of fallen away from that. So I'd go back to that and make it more intense and make it maybe do a half an hour segment of that every week there'd be a personality, and then the next week there'd be a half an hour just foods portion.
And speaking of food, I always ask people that come on the show, some of their favorite local places that they enjoy eating at. I mean, what are both of your guys' favorite local? I mean, besides where we're at right now, from scratch here.
Well, I have the tendency, because of where, just my time limitations and things, I have the tendency to go back to places a lot.
Well, we have our favorites.
Yeah, and I go to neighborhood places. So
Such as?
I go to Faustina quite a bit because it's close to where I live. I go to the Copper Onion and now Copper Common quite a bit because they're just convenient, close, and they're good. I mean, not just because they're convenient, but because they're really good. I go to Indochine, which is up on 13th East, and then Aristo, which is right next door to it, which is a Greek restaurant. Is really good Greek food up there. Other places I like to go for sushi lately, we've been going out to Sugar House and going to Tsunami. My kids really like it.
Is it pretty good? Pretty good sushi? I haven't been up there yet.
Yeah, my kids like it quite a bit, and it is good. Tsunami. Where else do we like to go?
I like the Bayou in Salt Lake. I live in Ogden.
What's life like in Ogden for you?
2-Bit Street Cafe in Ogden.
Right, and that's
my sister's restaurant in Ogden.
Oh yeah, you had her on the podcast actually. Mm-hmm. Was it Penny Ann or Penny?
Penny is her name.
Penny. Yeah. You had your sister on there.
But she has the best food in Ogden.
She really does have a good restaurant there.
I'll have to go up there and check it out.
Yeah.
I'll have to go up there and check it out.
On 25th Street, right, kind of close to the Union Station there at the end on the north side of the road. So I don't think we've eaten at a restaurant on our podcast that hasn't been good. Like, we've never left a place and gone, oh, the food just was terrible there. Like,
well, and
they've all been great.
And that's kind of what I try to, do, because people listening are always looking for new recommendations. I guess the best recommendation would be to go back and listen to some of the old Let's Go Eat show episodes.
Any place we've gone have been good.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have been to pretty much any restaurant.
We've been to Penny Ann's Cafe down on Main Street, which is really good.
Yeah. That's where I was thinking, Penny Ann's.
Penny Ann's, that's why you said Penny Ann's.
Yeah.
They're and really nice people, too.
We like Taqueria 27. We went. That's a place I like a lot.
You had Bad Brad Wheeler there, right?
Yeah. Have you been to Taqueria 27?
Delicious.
That's a great place. Todd Gardner is a great chef up there. Yeah. He's opening up a new place out south someplace. I can't wait for that. And then where else?
We go to the Oasis a lot.
Oasis Cafe is good. Just go to the letsgoeatshow.com and you'll find good restaurants.
The complete listing. Yeah. Before I wrap this up, I mean, anything else you guys want to add? Anything? I mean, how can people find you guys online? I know you're on Twitter, Bill. I don't know if you are, Dylan. Are you on Twitter, Dylan?
I am, yeah. And there's also Let's Go Eat Show on Twitter and Facebook. And we try to, when we have the time ahead of time, to like post when we're interviewing people. And we always, if anybody wants to come out and hang out with us. And
do you get people that come out and watch you?
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, that must be kind of fun to kind of have an audience.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, we've never got like hundreds of people come out, but
we've had twos and threes.
We've had couples of people.
Twos and threes.
Nice.
Fours.
And then the letsgoeatshow.com and iTunes and Stitcher Radio.
Excellent. And I'll put all the links on the show notes on the iamsaltlake.com website. That way people can find you there, and then obviously listen to you, Radio from Hell, Monday through Friday, 6 to 10. Mm-hmm. And it's on iTunes. I guess you can download it. 96.3 here in Utah. I think that's it, right? Did I miss anything there?
I don't know. I wasn't paying attention.
You weren't paying attention.
I think you got it.
Yeah, x96.com. Now, Dylan, you actually do another podcast too, right? Or
yes.
What's the name of the other podcast you do?
It's called the Front Row Podcast, and I do that with my friends at the Salt Lake Film Society. Uh-huh. And a bunch of us film nerds getting together, talking about movies, specifically the independent films that come to the Salt Lake Film Society at their Broadway and Tower theaters. And that's the Front Row Podcast at their website, slfs.org.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to sit down and I'll have to pick your brain and find out a little bit more about that on a separate episode sometime.
We'll have you come on our show and talk about movies.
Oh, I can always sit and talk about movies. I think we're all secretly movie nerds.
Did you see Noah?
I haven't yet. Is that pretty good?
I really quite enjoyed it.
Yeah,
actually.
Did it follow the book?
Oh, yeah. It's a science fiction movie about a science fiction book.
Right. Yep.
I'll have to go check that out.
Email Bill.
Email Bill at X96 and talk about Noah. All right, many thanks goes out to Bill Allred as well as Dylan Allred for coming on this episode. Can't thank them enough for taking some time out of their schedule, sitting down with me after, again, that was recorded after he did an interview with Jeffrey Stedman from Yelp. You can find that. Just go to the letsgoeatshow.com, download that episode. Jeffrey Stedman's a great individual as well, a really great guy. He's been a good friend. And check out that episode. Really, really fun time. Really, really great conversation. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode or any other episode of the podcast. There's a few ways you can do that. You could drop me an email at iamsaltlake@gmail.com. You can call the voicemail line at 385-202-5926. Also, take a moment, rate and review the podcast in iTunes. You can find the link at iamsaltlake.com. Just click that iTunes link and rate and review the podcast. It helps boost the ratings, helps get us exposed to more people. It helps get us in the top 100 list in iTunes, and that's going to help the podcast grow. It means a lot to me to hear what you guys are thinking of this show. Also, again, support the sponsors, Peach Treats, Urban Lounge, Crucial Fest. Find all those links on the show notes for this episode. And speaking of Crucial Fest, I'm going to end this episode playing a song by Oxcross. They're playing the Crucial Fest. I'm going to play a song here. It's called A Beginning Without an End. You can find that at oxcross.bandcamp.com. Download the digital album right there online. Great band here from Salt Lake City, Utah. Great individuals. They're going to be playing Crucial Fest. I'm going to be playing that here in just a second. But I want to thank you guys. I want to thank you for taking some time out listening to the I Am Salt Lake podcast. And we'll catch you again very soon with a brand new episode. Here's Oxcross, A Beginning Without an End.
Jesus!